Get him out of here. Arrest him now, the woman screamed, her voice cracking like thin ice under a heavy boot, echoing across the frozen expanse of Shadow Creek Reservoir as I hammered a private property sign into the half-frozen mud of my own land. She was practically vibrating with rage, clutching her phone like a weapon, dialing 911 because I had the absolute audacity to stop her entire neighborhood from using my front yard as their personal country club. But that phone call, the one she thought would destroy me, actually handed me the keys to the kingdom, loading the legal artillery I needed to obliterate their entitlement forever. Let's rewind the tape because you need to understand the insanity of what I walked into. I bought 40 acres of this historic water, complete with the skeletal, haunting remains of an 1890s flour mill, for dirt cheap at a tax auction. We're talking 15 grand for a slice of heaven. Sounds like the deal of the century, right? Dead wrong. I thought I was buying a sanctuary. Turns out, I was buying a war zone. The local homeowners association, led by a woman I'll call Patricia Sterling, had been treating my property like a public park for decades. And when Patricia stormed over that first morning with 2 police officers in tow, her designer boots crunching on the gravel I technically owned, she sneered at me with a look that could curdle milk, telling me, "We have rights to this water." One airtight legal notice later, those rights evaporated like mist. My name is Elias Thorne, and 6 months ago, I was a ghost of a man, 52 years old, watching a 20-year marriage dissolve into ink on divorce papers while my ex drove off with half my life in a luxury sedan. I was broken, and back in Blackwood Ridge, Oregon, living in a farmhouse that smelled like my grandfather's old tobacco and sawdust. I'm an electrician, wired to fix things, but after losing everything, I needed a project bigger than a fuse box, which is when I saw the notice. Tax auction, Shadow Creek Reservoir, 40 acres, mill ruins included. The previous owner, a recluse named Silas Vane, had died without a will, and his distant heirs wanted nothing to do with Oregon taxes, leaving 3 years of unpaid bills and a golden opportunity for a desperate man. It was beautiful, truly, a hidden gem nestled between rolling farmland and the manicured lawns of Pinecrest Haven, a subdivision that looked like it was built by a Xerox machine. I had 15 acres of spring-fed water, ancient oaks that whispered in the wind, and those limestone mill foundations, solid as a fortress, standing guard over the creek. I could see it all, a fishing guide service, maybe some glamping pods, a fresh start where the only noise was the wind in the trees. But I underestimated the neighborhood dictator. Picture every nightmare neighbor you've ever had. Give her a bleach-blonde bob, a clipboard, and a soul made of dry ice. And you have Patricia Sterling, 58 years old, a real estate shark, and the 8-year president of the Pinecrest Haven HOA. I should have known trouble was coming when I saw her white Mercedes with the vanity plates parked on my grass the day I took possession. I walked down to the mill ruins, hearing voices, and found 20 people sitting in folding chairs like it was Sunday service, with Patricia holding court front and center. "Listen up, everyone," she cooed, her voice dripping with artificial sweetener. "The holiday lakeside gala is going to be our best yet. Silas always loved seeing us here." I cleared my throat, the sound loud in the crisp air, and said, "Excuse me, folks. I'm Elias Thorne. I bought this property yesterday." The silence that followed was heavy, uncomfortable, the kind of quiet you get right before a storm breaks. Her smile froze, not a muscle moving, as she turned to me. "Oh, you must be the new owner. Well, Silas always let us use this space, and I'm sure you'll honor that tradition." That was my first mistake, trying to be a nice guy, trying to be reasonable with unreasonable people. "I appreciate the tradition," I said, rubbing the back of my neck. "But I'm planning a business here, and for insurance reasons, I need to control access." You would have thought I'd kicked a puppy in front of a kindergarten class. The collective gasp sucked the air out of the ruins, teenagers rolling their eyes, parents whispering about ruined holidays. Patricia stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her expensive, cloying perfume, and she dropped her voice to that patronizing tone people use on toddlers. "You're new here, sweetie. You'll learn how things work in Pinecrest. We take care of each other. We honor our history." The way she said "sweetie" made my skin crawl, a threat wrapped in velvet. "I'm sure we can work something out," I mumbled, backing away, but she called after me. "We'll see about that, sweetie. We'll just see." The next morning, I went to the hardware store, bought basic, no trespassing signs, and spent 20 minutes posting them. Nothing aggressive, just boundaries. I left for 2 hours to grab lunch and supplies, and when I came back, every single sign had been ripped down and thrown into the lake, floating like trash. And there was Patricia, standing with 2 cops, looking like she'd just caught the Zodiac killer. "There he is, officers." She pointed a manicured finger, "the man disturbing our peace." Officer Buzz Miller, a guy with a mustache stuck in the 80s and a gut that strained his belt, stepped forward. Turns out, he was Patricia's cousin because of course he was. "We've got complaints about you harassing the community," Miller said, thumb hooked in his belt, ignoring the fact that my property had been vandalized. "Harassing?" I pointed at my signs bobbing in the water. "Someone destroyed my property. Those signs are legal." Patricia chimed in, clutching her pearls. "Those signs were aggressive. This lake has been community space for 20 years. Miller nodded like she was quoting scripture. "Maybe you should rethink your attitude, Mr. Thorne. Fit in a little better." They left me standing in the exhaust fumes of the cruiser, realizing this wasn't a dispute, it was an invasion. Then came the paper blitz. First, a citation for improper vehicle storage for my truck on my own land. Second, unauthorized material storage for the lumber I bought to fix the dock. Third, a fine for unpermitted signage. Each ticket was $150, payable to the town council where Patricia sat as a community rep. But 20 years as an electrician taught me that when a contractor tries to bury you in paperwork, it's because they're hiding a crack in the foundation. I went to the county courthouse basement, a dungeon that smelled of mildew and despair, and spent hours squinting at microfiche records that hadn't seen the light of day since the Cold War. My grandfather used to say, "When a thief knocks, check the lock, but when a neighbor knocks, check the deed." And buried in those dusty files, I found the original 1890 deed, handwritten in elegant, flowing script. It contained a phrase that made my heart hammer against my ribs: mineral and water rights in perpetuity, including all access routes necessary for said rights. I hired a surveyor, a guy named Hank Mercer, costing me money I didn't have, but watching him work was pure poetry. "Well, I'll be damned," Hank muttered, staring at his theodolite. "Your property line doesn't stop at the grass, Elias. It extends 15 feet into their access road. The road everyone in Pinecrest Haven used to get to their lakefront mansions? It was my driveway. Every time Patricia drove her Mercedes home, she was trespassing. That night, I installed trail cameras in the trees, hidden like snipers, and within 48 hours, I had the footage that turned the tide. I caught Patricia bringing real estate clients down to the water, sweeping her arm across my land, telling them. And of course, this is all exclusive private community access, a major selling point. She was selling access to my land to pump up her commissions. But the cameras caught more than just fraud, they caught the disrespect. Teenagers drinking beer and smashing bottles on the millstones, kids urinating on the historic walls, and the kicker, Patricia walking her poodle, watching it defecate right on top of the native wildflowers I'd just planted, looking directly into the camera lens with a smirk before walking away without a bag. Then came the environmental citation. Someone reported me for disturbing wildlife because I was cleaning up the trash they left. The irony was so thick you could choke on it. I called my insurance agent, asking about liability for public access, and he nearly had a stroke on the phone. "Mr. Thorne, if you allow unauthorized public use, your policy is void. One kid drowns, and you lose everything: the land, the house, your shirt." The next morning, a county inspector, another one of Patricia's golf buddies, showed up claiming I was violating environmental codes by unauthorized land disturbance. He was writing me up for cleaning my own property while ignoring the beer cans his friends tossed. This wasn't about community, this was about money. Patricia was charging a premium for homes with lake access she didn't own, stealing from me to line her pockets. Then the hammer dropped. I got a certified letter from the state EPA. Someone had filed a complaint claiming I was building a commercial marina and hotel complex that would destroy the ecosystem. My cousin Elena, a shark of a lawyer who ate corporate polluters for breakfast, read the complaint in her office, the air smelling of stale coffee and victory. "This is fabricated, Elias, totally made up, and filing false reports with the EPA is a felony." While Elena sharpened her knives, the full survey came back. Not only did I own the road, but Patricia's private dock extended 8 feet onto my underwater land. I dug deeper into the sales records, my anger fueling me through sleepless nights. Over 5 years, Patricia had sold 12 homes, each listing bragging about exclusive private lake amenities, driving up the price by 20 to 40 grand per house. She had pocketed roughly $350,000 in fraudulent premiums based on my land. And Elena found out Patricia was already on probation with the real estate board for hiding flood risks. One more strike, and she was out. Patricia, sensing her grip slipping, went nuclear. Save our lake flyers appeared in every mailbox, calling for a town hall meeting to stop the corporate developer from stealing Christmas. She painted me as the Grinch, a monster coming to pave paradise. But while she organized her mob, I talked to the neighbors, the real ones, the ones tired of her tyranny. Jim O'Malley told me she measured his grass with a ruler. Others whispered about fines for the wrong shade of beige. They were terrified, but they were ready to snap. Then, I got a call from Lucas Vane, the nephew of the old owner. He had a box of his uncle's papers, records of years of abuse, bullying, and liability threats from the insurance company. Silas hadn't been generous. He had been a hostage. The morning of the town hall, another inspector, Inspector Vance, showed up, clearly sent by Patricia, citing me for planting native grass without a permit. I just handed him my phone and showed him the trail cam footage of the teenagers partying and the dog fouling the land. You're citing me for planting grass while they turn a historic site into a urinal? I asked. Vance went pale, muttered about a misunderstanding, and fled. That night, I walked into the community center, the air thick with tension and the smell of cheap floor wax. 70 people sat in folding chairs, glaring at me like I was the devil himself, while Patricia stood on stage, flanked by blown-up photos of children playing on my land. We are here to protect our values, she preached, working the crowd like a televangelist. Some people want to steal our memories. Then she played her ace card. We are filing for adverse possession. 20 years of use gives us the land. Her brother-in-law, a sweaty lawyer named Larry, stood up to explain, but he walked right into a trap. Adverse possession requires hostile use, meaning without permission. I stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. Actually, I said, my voice calm, masking the adrenaline flooding my veins. I have the records from Silas Vane giving specific, revocable permission, which kills your adverse possession claim dead. Patricia's smile faltered. I pulled out the surveyor's map and projected it onto the screen. And while we're discussing legalities, this map shows that your access road is on my land, and Mrs. Sterling, your dock is trespassing on my property. The room erupted. People turned to each other, realizing their driveways, their landscaping, their private amenities were all lies. Patricia shrieked. This is extortion. These are lies. But the seed of doubt was planted. I dropped the final bomb. She's been charging you premiums for access she doesn't own. You've been defrauded. I walked out of that meeting leaving chaos in my wake. But the real twist, the one that would end the war, was waiting for me in the bottom of Lucas Vane's box of papers. 3 days later, buried under utility bills from the 90s, I found the 1890 mill deed again, but I read the fine print this time. Said property includes artificial lake created by damming of Mill Creek, with downstream landowners bearing proportional responsibility for dam maintenance and structural integrity. I read it 3 times. The lake wasn't natural. It was a reservoir held back by an earthen dam built 130 years ago, a dam that sat directly above Pinecrest Haven, a dam that, according to the deed and Ohio state law, the downstream residents, the HOA members, were financially responsible for maintaining. I called Elena, my hands shaking. There hasn't been a safety inspection in 30 years, I told her. Patricia and her crew have been fighting for rights to the lake, but they've been sitting under a loaded gun. I hired Hank Mercer, who was also a structural engineer, to inspect the dam. It was a horror show. It's held together by mud and prayer, Elias, Hank said, pointing out cracks you could stick a fist into. One heavy rain season, and this thing goes. We're talking a 20-foot wall of water hitting Pinecrest Haven at highway speeds. The repair bill? Emergency stabilization, $180,000. Full reconstruction, over $300,000. And according to the deed, they had to pay for it. It was cosmic justice. They wanted ownership. Fine, they could own the liability. I could demand immediate payment or petition the state to breach the dam for safety, draining their precious lake and turning their waterfront property into a mud pit. Elena was practically giddy. This isn't just leverage, Elias. This is a nuke. Their insurance will drop them the second this goes public. We built our war room at my kitchen table, engineering reports piling up next to legal briefs. We weren't just fighting a neighbor. We were fighting to save their lives and their wallets, whether they wanted us to or not. We brought in Pastor Dan, Officer Miller's brother, a good man who saw the madness for what it was. We had a plan: file the dam safety violation, trigger a state inspection, and then inform the homeowners of the bill. It was a $2,400 assessment per house for repairs versus losing $50,000 in property value if the lake was drained. The math was simple, but Patricia wasn't rational. She was a cornered animal. The Sunday night before the state inspection, the power to my farmhouse was cut. I woke up in pitch blackness, the silence heavy and oppressive. My security system was dead. My truck wouldn't start, sugar in the gas tank. And my trail cameras? Turned to the sky, memory cards gone. It was a professional hit. They wanted me blind and immobile for the inspection. Then the flyers appeared on windshields. Predator Elias Thorne threatens to blow up the dam unless we pay him millions. They were framing me as a terrorist. I had to borrow Lucas's rusted pickup just to make it to my own property line the next morning. When I arrived, Inspector Vance, the serious one from the state, not the local crony, was already there, and Patricia was staging a performance worthy of an Academy Award. She was surrounded by her loyalists, handing the inspector a dossier thick enough to choke a horse. "We are terrified, Inspector," she sobbed, clutching her scarf. "He's threatened to open the spillway. He's sabotaging the infrastructure. We found oil dumped in the water this morning." My stomach churned. She was playing for keeps. Vance looked at me with deep suspicion. "Mr. Thorne, these are serious allegations." I tried to defend myself, but without my camera footage, it was my word against a choir of liars. Patricia pressed her advantage, showing photos of motor oil slicking the reeds and native plants ripped out by the roots, evidence of my negligence. But Vance paused. He looked at her photos, then at the water. "Ma'am," he said, his voice flat, "motor oil disperses. These stains in your photos, they look poured. Like from a can. Recently." Patricia paled, but I saw my opening. "Inspector," I said, "my main cameras were disabled last night, but I installed a solar-powered backup loop in the tree line last week. They run on a separate cellular uplink." The blood drained from Patricia's face so fast, she looked like a corpse. I pulled up the cloud footage on my phone. There, in high-definition infrared, timestamp 2:47 a.m., was a figure creeping along the shoreline. A figure pouring a gas can of oil into the water. A figure stepping into the light. That's Tyler," a neighbor whispered. Tyler, Patricia's teenage grandson. The video showed him uprooting the plants, trashing the site, and then hopping into the passenger seat of a white Mercedes waiting on the access road, Patricia's car. The silence was absolute. Vance stared at the screen, then at Patricia. "You're accusing this man of environmental terrorism," Vance said, his voice deadly quiet, "while your family is on tape committing the crime?" Patricia snapped. The mask fell off, revealing pure, unadulterated panic. "It's fake. It's AI. He's a monster." She pulled out her phone and, in front of 30 witnesses and a state official, dialed 911. "Help. He has explosives. He's going to blow the dam. Send everyone." It was insanity. She was calling in a bomb threat on a guy standing next to the state inspector. Vance immediately pulled his radio. "Dispatch, this is State Inspector Vance. Cancel that call. False report. Witness intimidation in progress." Pastor Dan stepped forward, his voice booming like the voice of God. "Patricia, stop. You are committing a crime." Officer Miller pulled up, sirens wailing, expecting a bomb squad situation, only to find his cousin screaming about conspiracies while the state inspector explained she had just filed a false felony report. Miller looked at Patricia, looked at the inspector, and realized he couldn't save her this time. He took her arm, not gently. The inspection concluded with a grim verdict. The dam was critical. Everyone received the notice of liability within 72 hours. But the real finale came at the holiday festival. It went ahead, but the mood had shifted. Patricia was out on bail, standing on her stage, trying to rally the troops one last time, screaming about our heritage. But then the county prosecutor, a man named Williams, stepped up to the mic. He laid it out. The fraud, the false reports, the dangerous dam, the financial liability that Patricia had hidden from them. The crowd turned. It wasn't a mob anymore. It was a group of people realizing they'd been played. I took the mic, my hands steady. I don't want to ruin your holidays, I told them. I want to fix the dam. I want to sign legal easements so you can use the lake safely. But we do it by the book. We share the cost. We share the responsibility. The applause started slow, then built into a roar. It was the sound of a community waking up. 3 months later, Shadow Creek is a different world. Patricia pleaded guilty to filing false reports and fraud. She lost her license, paid restitution, and moved to Florida. God help her new neighbors. Jim O'Malley is the new HOA president, and we signed a fair deal. The dam is fixed, paid for by the association. My fishing business is booked solid, and the no trespassing signs? They're gone, replaced by private property, community access by permit only. Standing here on the dock, watching the sun set over water that is finally, truly peaceful, I realized that sometimes you have to burn the village down to save it. We stood up to a bully, and in doing so, we saved a community from drowning in its own lies. But it makes you wonder, where is the line between protecting what's yours and sharing what you have? When does tradition become toxicity? Let me know in the comments below. I'm Elias Thorne, and this was the battle for Shadow Creek. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and never, ever let them take your ground.